The horse and rider came up the hill road at 11 in the evening, and Orla Venn heard the hooves before she heard the knock. She was at the workbench in the back room, grinding dried valerian root into powder, her hands steady and her mind on nothing in particular, the way they could be after 9 years of this work, hands and brain running separate from each other. The wind was pulling hard off the bay. The candle over her bench had guttered twice already. She set down the pestle when she heard the gate. The girl at the door was perhaps 17, hair plastered to her face, cloak soaked through to the wool beneath. She was holding a lantern in both hands, and the lantern was shaking. "Mrs. Venn," she said, "please, it's his lordship." Orla did not ask which lordship. There was only one great house within riding distance of Stenwick Cove, and it sat on the bluff above the harbour like a dark shoulder turned against the sea. "How long?" Orla said. 3 nights. He fell on the study stairs. "We thought," the physician said. He said it was the nerves from India. He said rest and quiet. "The physician said this 3 nights ago." "The physician hasn't come back." The girl's voice went thin on the last word. "He sent a letter. He said the roads." Orla looked past her at the rain. Her fire was banked. Her valerian was half ground. She had a pint of elderflower tincture steeping that would want straining by 4 in the morning or be wasted. "Who is in the house?" she said. "Only me and cook and the stableman, and Lark, of course. Lark she's frightened, Mrs. Venn. She won't come away from his room." Lark, the Lord's ward, 7 years old if Orla had the count right. "Wait," Orla said. She went back inside and put on her boots and her cloak and filled her bag with what the night looked like it would need. She did not think about the road. She did not think about the last time she had ridden out in a November storm 4 years ago, when the boat had gone down, and 2 days later the men had told her. She thought about Foxglove. She thought about the particular way the girl's hands had shaken, not from cold alone. She went out to the horse. The girl's name was Polly Brent. She told Orla this at a canter on the hill road, raising her voice against the wind. She had been in service at Quay Manor for 2 years. The estate, Brethwick officially, though everyone in the village called it Quay Manor for the family name, had been half empty since old Lord Quay had died the year before, and the new lord had come home from Bombay with a trunk and a cough, and not much else. "He's not well like a man who's had fever," Polly said. She was choosing words carefully, Orla noticed. "He's not well like a man who ought not to be not well." "Say that plainly." Polly was quiet for 30 seconds of road. Then he was walking before supper Wednesday. He had his evening tonic and sat in the study an hour. Then cook heard him on the stairs. He was on his side on the landing. She stopped. "I've seen sick men, Mrs. Venn. My father was sick 3 winters. This is different." Orla held that and let the horse carry them forward. The lights of Quay Manor showed above the tree line, one window yellow against the black of the sky, one pale from a candle burned low. "Is there anyone else coming?" Orla said. "Family?" Polly's hands tightened on the shared reins. "Mr. Harlan Quay, his lordship's cousin. The steward wrote to him the same night. He's travelling from London." "When does he arrive?" 3 days, perhaps 4. The gate of Quay Manor was open. The stableman came out for the horse without speaking. Orla followed Polly inside. The study smelled of old paper and the particular close sweetness of a room that had been too warm for too long. Lord Stellan Quay was on the settee by the fire. Polly had managed that much. He lay on his side with a folded blanket under his head and another pulled to his shoulder. He was 34 by Orla's reckoning, though she had seen him only twice before, once at the harbour and once at Easter service. He had his father's dark colouring and something in the jaw that suggested he had not eaten enough in recent months. His breathing was shallow and uneven in a way that made Orla set her bag down and kneel immediately. His pulse was there, it was not what it should be. She put her fingers to his throat and held them, 2 slow, then 3 quick together, then a long pause that made her count the seconds before she moved. "Polly, light me every candle in the room, then bring me cold water, a cloth and the child. Lark is upstairs. Bring her down. She is not to be alone in this house tonight." She did not explain there would be time. She turned him further onto his side, checked his mouth was clear, loosened the collar of his shirt. His temperature was wrong. Not fever, but something underneath it, something metabolic and slow. She pressed the back of her hand to his sternum and counted his breaths. She had learned this at 14, sitting beside a fisherman who had eaten the wrong mushrooms, and she had not forgotten it in 16 years. "My lord," she said, "my name is Orla Venn. I am from the village. I am going to keep you on your side, and I need you to keep breathing. Do you hear me?" He did not answer. She did not stop talking. She talked him through the next 3 hours, low and steady, changing the cold cloth at his neck every 20 minutes, piling the fire. When Polly brought Lark downstairs, the child came and stood near Orla's shoulder without speaking, and Orla let her stay. Lark Quay was 7, dark-haired like her guardian, with the wide, watching eyes of a child who had been in houses where she was not quite sure of her welcome. She was not frightened exactly. She was measuring. "Is he going to die?" she said at midnight. "I am here to make sure he does not," Orla said. Lark sat at the edge of the settee near his feet and watched. At 2 in the morning his eyes opened. He looked at the ceiling first, then the fire, then Orla, who was sitting back on her heels with a cold cloth in her lap and waiting. "Who are you?" he said. "Orla Venn, the herbalist from Stenwick Cove." He looked at her for a long moment with the careful look of a man deciding if he was dreaming. Then he said, "Where is Lark?" "Here," the child appeared at his elbow, immediate. "I didn't go upstairs. I stayed." Something in his face settled. He put his hand over hers briefly before he turned back to Orla. "How long?" he said. 3 hours I have been here. 3 nights since you fell, according to your maid." "I know how many nights." He tried to push himself upright, and Orla set her hand flat to his shoulder. "You will not sit up yet. Drink first." She had water in a tin cup. He drank it. He lay back without arguing, which told her more about how bad he felt than anything else would have. "What is wrong with me?" he said. "I have a suspicion." "Tell me." "When I am certain." He looked at her sideways. He had the eyes of a man accustomed to being answered when he asked things. She held the look until he turned away. "You came in a storm," he said. "The storm was already there. I came on your maid's horse." He was quiet a moment, then low so Lark could not hear. "The physician, has he been sent for again?" "He sent a letter roads," he said. "Yes," a pause. "The roads have been passable since Thursday." Orla put the cloth back to his neck. She let it stand. He was 3 days improving. In that time, Orla learned the house. She learned which rooms were shut and which were not, and why. She learned that Cook, a woman of 50 named Mrs. Chard, had been with the family 12 years and was the only servant who had stayed through the full year of old Lord Quay's decline. She learned that the steward, a man named Briggs, came every morning with a ledger and went away again, and wrote more letters than a steward ordinarily had cause to write. She watched Briggs write the letters. She did not say anything to him. She learned that Lark's full name was Lark Alderton, daughter of Stellan's late sister, who had died 3 years ago of a fever that had taken the sister's husband as well. Lark had been at Quay Manor since. She took her meals at the same table as her guardian, sat her lessons with a schoolbook in the window of the study each morning, and was not, Orla thought, a child who had been overlooked. She was a child who understood, with the particular clarity of the young who have already lost something, that the person who had not overlooked her was now lying on a settee, unable to sit up unaided, and she was watching everyone else in the house with those careful, measuring eyes. On the 2nd day, Stellan kept down broth. On the 3rd, he asked for the curtain to be opened. Orla opened it. The November sea below the bluff was grey and rough and entirely itself. "You haven't slept," he said. "I've slept." In the chair, 4 hours together at most. She was at the desk by the window with her notebook open. She did not look up. "You have been listening to me sleep." "I've been awake. You sleep quietly." She looked up at that. He was watching her with a directness that was not impolite, exactly. Something in it was asking. "My father was a country doctor," she said. "I learned early. You sleep when the patient sleeps." "You are not a doctor." "No." She went back to her notebook. He wanted me to study. My husband wanted me to stop. I stopped. The room was quiet for a moment. The sea moved below the window. Your husband, he said. He drowned 4 years ago this November. She kept writing. A nor'easter came in fast. He was at the harbour. The boat went before he could get clear. A pause. We had a son. He was 2 months old. He did not live the winter. His name was Calloway for my father's mother's side, but we called him Cal, and I say that seldom now because there is no one left to say it to. She looked up. I have said it once today. That is enough. He did not offer sympathy. She had not wanted it. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, My sisters died of the fever that went through the mill town 3 years ago. She and her husband both. My father died last autumn, 3 weeks after I came home from India. He had been failing for 2 years, I was told. No one wrote to tell me. Orla set down her pen. Who was in the house when he was ill? She said. A pause. Briggs managed things. My cousin Harlan came down from London twice. She stood. My lord, she said. Stellan. A sideways glance. You have had your hand on my throat at 3 a.m. We are past lordship. Stellan. She kept her voice even. I believe you have been given foxglove in your evening tonic, possibly with laudanum added. I believe the cup has not been properly cleaned since whoever began this started. She looked at him. I believe your father's final illness may have looked very much like this. The fire moved in the grate. Lark's voice came from the hallway, half a word, then silence. Harlan, he said. It was not a question. I do not know, not yet. But you suspect. I suspect someone who benefits from the estate management passing into other hands during a period of incapacity. Someone who also benefits from the guardianship of Lark, whose mother left a considerable trust. Stellan closed his eyes. He opened them. You will find the proof before I can. I will try. She moved toward the door. From tonight you drink only what I pour, nothing that has sat on this sideboard, no evening tonic, nothing the physician sent. And if I am thirsty at night? I will be there. He was quiet a moment then. Will you stay? I have been staying. Will you stay until I can walk? Yes. He turned his face back to the window. After a while, quietly, almost to himself. I sent for you, I told Polly in the afternoon of the second day. I said to send for the woman from the cove. I had heard your name from the vicar's wife in September. I had already been ill 2 days by then, and I knew something was wrong, and I did not yet have the proof. I had Polly swear she would go for you, whether I was conscious to ask again or not. Orla stood at the window. The sea was the colour of old pewter. You sent for me before I knew to come, she said. Yes. She went for the water. He did not call her back. Harlan Quay arrived on the 5th morning in a hired coach with a leather trunk and a very good overcoat. Orla saw the coach from the upper hallway, where she was with Lark at the window, walking the child through her letters. She had time, before the footsteps reached the study, to move the chair from the foot of the settee to the side, to set a clean cup of water at Stellan's right hand, to place the candle behind his shoulder, so the light fell on the face of anyone standing at the door. She had stood at her father's elbow through the reading of her mother's will, in a room where 2 of her uncles wanted what the will would not give them. She knew the arrangement of furniture that gave a sick man authority. You have done this before, Stellan said, watching her. I have been at beds where other people wanted what was in them. He almost smiled. It was the first time she had seen it. Harlan Quay was handsome. This was the first thing Orla registered, and the last thing she let herself rest on. He had Stellan's colouring and much better health, and he crossed the room with a warmth that seemed entirely genuine, his hand out, his face creased with what looked like honest relief. Stellan, my God, man, I came the moment Briggs wrote. He sat, unbidden, at the foot of the settee. He had a letter in one hand, and he had not yet acknowledged Orla. His eyes found her eventually, standing at the desk, and he smiled. Mrs. Venn, Stellan said, from the village. She has been here since Wednesday. A village woman. The smile was warm. The eyes behind it were not quite still. Thank you for your service, Mrs. Venn. I am sure my cousin's own physician will be here within the week, and we will have you home to your cottage. Orla stayed where she stood. "Mrs. Venn remains," Stellan said. "She is at Lark's side until the child is settled." Harlan glanced at the window seat, where Lark sat watching him with her book closed in her lap. He smiled at the girl. Lark did not smile back. "Of course," Harlan said. "As you wish." He unfolded the letter. "Stellan, I must speak plainly. I know this is not the moment. But I have spoken with a solicitor in London, and I have reviewed Briggs's correspondence." "What correspondence?" "Briggs has kept a record of your episodes, the falls, the confusion. There have been no episodes before this week." "Stellan," Harlan's voice was gentle, almost pained. "You have been unwell since September, your own steward documents." "What Briggs documents and what is true are two separate things." Stellan's voice had not risen. It was the flatness of a man who was controlling something. "What is in the letter, Harlan?" "A petition, a committee of lunacy, for the period of incapacity only, revoked upon full recovery. To protect the estate, to protect Lark, I would hold things in order until you are well. We would bring this before a magistrate properly for everyone's protection." "And if I do not recover?" Harlan leaned forward. He had an almost embarrassed warmth. "Stellan, you will recover. But if, God forbid, the estate would not tangle, Lark would not be a ward of strangers. Everything your father built would be preserved." "My father?" Stellan looked at his cousin for a long time. "You were at this house when my father was dying." "I came when I was sent for." "You came in August and September and October." "To help." Orla looked at Lark. The child was very still. "Stellan," Harlan said, and just for a moment the warmth thinned like paint on wet wood. Then it came back. "Let me sit at your hand through this. Let me speak for you on Friday. It is all I am asking." Stellan glanced at Orla. She shook her head once. "On Friday," Stellan said, "you may come to the vestry of St. Aldwyn's and hear what I have to say to the magistrate. Bring whom you like. Bring Briggs. I will have my own witnesses." Harlan rose. His colour had gone briefly to skim milk. Then it came back, along with the smile. He bowed to Stellan. He bowed to Orla, a precise civil bow meant to be noticed. "Mrs. Venn," he said, "a pleasure." He went. Orla shut the door behind him. She turned to the room. Lark had come down from the window seat and was standing near Stellan's hand, close enough to touch. Stellan looked at Orla. "He will not wait until Friday," he said. "No, he will have something else by then." A pause. "I should marry you before he comes back," Stellan said. "For the protection. I release you after, if you wish it." "I know." "You know the protection part, or you know the release part?" "Both," she said. "Friday morning, before the hearing, at the vestry, so the record holds and you keep the estate, and Lark stays where she is. We will see what comes after." He nodded. She went to check on the fire. The night before the hearing, Orla did not sleep. She sat at the window of the small room Polly had given her, Lark breathing steadily in the cot at the foot of the bed, and she looked at the paper on the table, with the special licence and the minister's name on it, and she did not sleep. She had been a wife once. She had been a mother for 8 weeks. She had been a widow 4 years. She thought she understood the shape of all three. She did not understand the shape of this. She thought of iron. Her husband. She thought of the last morning, the particular ordinariness of it, the coffee and the half-loaf, and the way he had kissed her on the cheek, and not the mouth because he was in a hurry. She thought of their son, Cal, who had not been a full person yet when she lost him, but who had been entirely real, and who had had his grandfather's nose, and whose name she had not said to another living person in 3 years before she had said it that morning to a duke across a broth tray. Stellan had not said he was sorry. He had told her about his sister. There was a footstep in the hall. She knew it before the knock. She had been listening to this man breathe and move for 5 days, and she knew his step by now, the way she knew the tide by the sound of the shingle. "Orla," he said at the door. "Come in." He came in, a coat over his nightshirt, bare feet on the cold boards, one hand on the door frame because he was still not entirely steady. He looked at her face in the low candlelight, at her hands in her lap, at the untouched cup of water on the table. "Are you afraid?" he said. "Not of tomorrow." "What then?" She was quiet a moment. "That I will owe a kindness I cannot repay, a name, a roof, the child. There is no debt." There is always a debt between people of such different standing, whether they wish to see it or not. She kept her voice level. "I am telling you so that on Saturday and the Saturday after, when you are in company with women who have been bred to this life from the cradle, and I have not, you remember I told you, in this room, in the dark." He was quiet for a long while. Outside the wind had dropped. The harbour was still. "I should have sent for you sooner," he said. "I knew on the second day that something was being put in the tonic. I had the knowing. I did not yet have proof, and I thought I could find it myself, and I waited, and I let 3 more days go by." He set his hand against the doorframe. "That is not a debt you owe me. That is a debt I owe you, and my sister and my father. I will not let you carry it." He looked at her across the low candle. His face was the face of a man who had decided something, and was not uncertain of the decision. Orla rose. She crossed the room. She stood at the doorframe across from him and put her hand to his face, the flat of her palm against his cheek, the same way she had held it to his throat that first night to take his pulse, but different. "I will marry you," she said. "Yes," he said. "Now go and sleep. We have a hearing in the morning." He did not move at once. He said, "You stayed." She said, "I was already here." He went. She blew out the candle and lay down in the dark, listening to Lark breathe, and watched the light come slowly up out of the sea. She was at Mr. Sadler's door at 5:30. She had gone at 4, down the back stairs and out through the kitchen garden, when Polly had come white-faced to her room. Briggs had the journal, the record, Polly had been keeping since the beginning, every cup, every dose, every date and signature, and he had taken it from its place in the linen press, and was reading it by candlelight in the steward's room. She had 4 miles of coast road and 2 hours. She walked it in boots and her cloak over her nightgown, and she kept her mind on Mr. Sadler's ledger, and on Foxglove in counted drops, and on a cousin from London who had been at this estate when the old lord was dying. She kept her mind off everything else until she reached the turning 1/2 mile from the manor gate, and then she allowed herself one thought, plainly, the way she thought when she was working. "Ian died on a Tuesday. He died at sea, and the sea has him. He can do nothing for what I am walking toward, and nothing against what I am walking from. I am a woman on an errand for a lord and his sister's child, and I am going to Mr. Sadler's by 6. That was enough. She walked. Mr. Sadler opened the door before she finished knocking. He had been a friend of her father's for 30 years. He took one look at her face in the grey morning light and said, "Come in." He brought the ledger to the kitchen table without being asked. He opened it to the Quay account. Foxglove tincture, August the 9th, 2 drams, signed Briggs for Mr. Harlan Quay. Foxglove tincture, August the 23rd, Briggs. Harlan Quay laudanum, September the 4th, 2 ounces, signed Briggs. Harlan Quay laudanum, September the 3 ounces, the same. Mr. Sadler took off his spectacles. "The man himself has not been to my counter since June," he said. "It was always the steward, always in the cousin's name, always signed with the cousin's signature." He looked at her. "Orla, was this man at Quay Manor when Sir Stellan's father was ill?" "Yes," she said. "He was there 3 times in the final 2 months." A silence. "Go," he said. "The cart will take you back to the gate. You will be there before 7. She was. They were married at 8 o'clock in the vestry of St. Aldwyn's by the Reverend Mr. Greer. Lark stood beside Orla in her second best dress and held the small bunch of winter heather that Mr. Greer's wife had pressed into her hand without comment. The magistrate, Sir Paxton, witnessed. Mr. Sadler witnessed. Polly Brent witnessed and wept quietly into her glove. Stellan spoke his vows in a voice that was clear and unhurried. Orla spoke hers in the voice she used when she needed a room to hear her without interruption. Not loud, difficult to argue with. When the minister closed his book, he said, with the mild expression of a man who had performed a great many ceremonies, "You may kiss your wife, my lord." Stellan turned to her. He set his hand against her cheek the way she had set hers against his in the doorway the night before. He bent and kissed her once, brief, deliberate, warm. the kiss of a man who had made a decision and was not uncertain of it. He drew back, he looked at her. "Well then," he said. She nearly laughed, she held it. "Sir Paxton," he said, "the hearing is at 10. "Indeed it is, my lord. We have an hour. Shall we have tea?" Harlan Quay arrived at the vestry at 10 past 10 with 2 solicitors and a letter from a London physician. He had a leather portfolio under his arm and the same warm, open expression he had worn in the study 6 days ago. He stopped 4 paces inside the door and took in the room. Orla sat at the table with Mr. Sadler's purchase ledger open and Polly's journal beside it. Stellan sat at the head of the table with Lark in the chair to his right, her book closed in her lap. Sir Paxton sat at the far end. Mr. Sadler stood by the wall with his hands clasped. Harlan's expression did not crack. It thinned, recalibrated, and held. "Stellan," he said carefully. "Harlan, a pause. You have not met my wife." Harlan looked at Orla. He looked at the ledger. He looked at the journal beside it. His colour was going the way Orla had expected. "I see," he said. "You will see further presently." Stellan set his hand on the open ledger. "Sir Paxton, may I?" "You may, my lord." "This is the purchase record kept by Mr. Sadler's apothecary in Stenwick Cove. Every entry for foxglove and laudanum made to Quay Manor in the past 4 months is signed in my cousin's name. The entries for the same substances in the weeks before my father died last autumn are also signed in my cousin's name." He nodded at Polly. She stood, her hands clasped tight. "This is Polly Brent, maidservant at Quay Manor. She has kept a daily record of every cup she poured for me since the week I fell ill. She kept it by her own conscience and at considerable risk to herself. She came to my wife in the small hours of this morning when the steward attempted to take it from her. She is here by her own will. She has my pardon on the condition of telling this court all of it." Sir Paxton took both books. He read slowly. He had spectacles and he used them. Harlan stood through it. His hand was at his hip, and the knuckles were white. When Sir Paxton looked up, his face was the colour of cold ash. "Mr. Quay, the purchase record places foxglove and laudanum in your name, at this man's counter, at amounts and intervals consistent with the chronic poisoning of a grown man, and this journal corroborates the dosing dates from the estate's own record." He paused. "Have you anything to say?" "The woman is a village herbalist," Harlan said. "She has been in that house less than a week." Orla stood up. She had meant to let the magistrate lead. She was a woman from Stenwick Cove who had been in the house 6 days, married into it this morning, and had no title and no breeding, and had told her husband as much the night before. She stood anyway. "Mr. Harlan Quay," she said. The room went very still. "For 6 nights I poured the water that kept his lordship breathing. The pattern of his illness is consistent with every case of slow digitalis poisoning I observed in my father's practice over 20 years. That is what I am. The daughter of a country doctor who taught me to count a pulse and trust what the body tells." She kept her eyes on Harlan across the open books. "The purchase record names your account. The journal names every cup. Mr. Sadler will swear to both before this court and before God. Whatever else you say about me, you must say it to those 2 books first." Harlan's mouth opened, closed. "She is correct," Mr. Sadler said from the wall. "I will swear to it." Sir Paxton folded his spectacles. He looked at Harlan for a long time. "The steward Briggs," Orla said quietly to the magistrate. "He signed for the purchases. He kept a false record." "He will be questioned," Sir Paxton said. "If the court finds him complicit, he will be tried separately and will not keep his post. There will be no loose ends in this matter, Mrs. Venn." He looked at Harlan. "Mr. Quay, I have constables at the door. You will go with them to Truro tonight. There will be a magistrate's hearing on Monday and an indictment at the quarter sessions. You will not return to Quay Manor. You will not write to it. You will not be within 4 miles of the estate or of Lord Quay's ward. Is that understood?" Harlan looked at his cousin one final time. Whatever he was searching for in his brother's face, he did not find it. "Understood," he said. The constables came. The vestry door shut behind them. The room breathed. Polly sat down hard in the nearest chair. Mr. Sadler put the ledger under his arm and looked at his hands. Lark came around the table and pressed against Orla's side without a word, and Orla put her arm around the child without thinking. Stellan set his elbow on the table and his face in his hand. He sat that way for a long moment. Then he raised his head. He looked at Orla, who had his ward against her hip, and Mr. Sadler's handshake to receive, and a great many things ahead of her she had not been born to, and who had told him as much the night before in the dark. "You stayed," he said. She said, "I told you I would." 16 months passed. Harlan Quay was tried in December and transported to Nova Scotia on the strength of the ledger and Briggs's testimony. Briggs had told everything before the court, every purchase he had signed for in Harlan's name, every instruction, every date. He was convicted as an accessory and given 3 years' labour before parole. The physician, who had not returned after the first night, did not practice in the county again. These were the facts. There were no loose ends. In the spring there was a supper at Quay Manor for the tenants. The harbour families came, and the fishermen, and Mr. Sadler with his wife, and the vicar's household, and Mrs. Chard cooked for 3 days and did not complain. Orla stood through the evening with Stellan at her shoulder, and the village looked at her the way people look at something they are still in the process of deciding. She stood it because she had said she would. When the last guest left, Stellan said, "You were remarkable tonight." She said, "I kept my hand still." That, he said, is the same thing. She had laughed, really laughed, the kind that came up unexpected and surprised her, and he had watched her do it with the expression of a man filing something away. Now it was July. The orchard at Quay Manor was deep in leaf. Orla was in the garden near the south wall with a basket and a pair of cutting shears, working through the lavender that wanted drying for the still room, moving more slowly than she would have liked because she was 8 months with child but moving, and the morning was warm, and the sea below the bluff was the colour the sea was in July. Lark was at the far end of the path, practising handsprings on the grass with the concentrated determination of a child who has decided to learn a thing and cannot understand why her body has not yet cooperated. She had been at it since breakfast. Stellan came from the house and sat on the stone wall near the lavender. He watched Lark too. "She'll succeed," he said. "She's been at it 3 hours. She'll either succeed or sleep." He smiled. It came easily now, the smile. Orla had watched it come more easily over the past 16 months, the way warmth came back into a room after a long, cold winter. They were quiet for a while. The bees were in the lavender. The cart from the village had left a parcel of books that morning. Lark had already catalogued them. "The cliff path," he said. She looked at him. The vicar mentioned it's been mended. The gate is clear. A pause. "You said in the spring you would walk it again." "I said I would consider walking it again." "You said in April that you would go in June." "It is the 6th of July." "It is still summer." He looked at her sideways. "Careful, Orla." She set down the shears. She thought of the cliff path she had not walked in 4 years, the loose piece of slate at the turning, the salt smell. What she had said to herself the last morning she had stood there, before she had turned and walked back to a house with no lamp in its window. She thought, "It is July, the path is mended, the sea is not dark." "Not today," she said soon. He did not press. He had learned not to press. 3 mornings later, when Lark was at her lessons and the house was quiet, Orla put on her good boots and went out through the kitchen garden and through the orchard and came to the gate at the cliff road. She went alone. She had asked for that. She walked a 1/4 mile and came to the turning. She came to the place where the slate had always been loose. The stone had been mended, new set and careful, done by someone who had done it recently and without being asked. She set her hand on the wall. The stone was warm from the morning sun. She said aloud, because there was no one to hear, "I have walked it. I have a husband who did not drown. I have a child coming who will have your nose if she is lucky. I have a girl who is mine in every way that counts. The path is mended. The gate is open. I am going to walk back to the orchard now, and I am not going to walk this path with my back to it any more." She did not cry. She had done her crying in the year after, and she was not a woman who needed to do a thing twice. She turned, she walked back. At the orchard gate, Stellan was waiting with his hand out. Lark was at his side, her school book abandoned in favour of whatever she had heard through the window, watching Orla come across the grass with the particular attention she gave to things she was deciding about. Orla took his hand. She had not stayed because she had been called out in the rain, or because the situation had closed around her before she could think. She had stayed because she had chosen, each morning, in each small decision, to choose it again. She had chosen it the night she walked the coast road at 4 a.m. for a ledger. She had chosen it the night she put her hand to his face in a dark doorway and said, "I will marry you," and meant not the paper but the thing beneath it. She crossed the orchard with him and the child, toward the house where the still room wanted stocking, and the lavender wanted drying, and the lamps would be lit by evening against the cool that came in off the sea, even in July. She was not done choosing. She thought, as she walked, that she had only just begun.